1953 saw the American car market change forever with the introduction of the new Corvette. This new and exciting American sports car would end up playing a pivotal role in the shaping of American automotive history. But it was not until 1955 until the Corvette really started to hit its stride and finally offered a V8 under the hood. It offered a 6-cylinder beforehand. But the Corvette couldn't just go unnoticed by every other American automaker. Ford in particular felt the sting in their own company pride when Chevrolet released the Corvette and got to work rapid prototyping their own Corvette competitor, which would grace showroom floors in 1955. And that car was the Thunderbird, a sleek, two-door Ford sports coupe that packed a V8 under the hood in hopes of duking it out with the Corvette. And there was one special Thunderbird that offered what no Corvette at the time did, and that was a supercharged V8. This is the story of the incredibly rare F-Code 1957 Ford Thunderbird. But first, I would like to take a quick moment to tell you how today's video sponsor can help make your internet experience safer and easier. Surfshark is an amazing VPN browser extension that not only keeps your data out of the hands of potentially malicious websites and bad people looking to steal your information, but it can also make your browsing experience on the internet easier. If you're watching this video on a public Wi-Fi network, for example, in a coffee shop or your place of work, then you are now at an increased risk for a potential data breach that could give a hacker your sensitive information that you don't want them to have. Surfshark makes these risks a thing of the past. If you want to stay anonymous, Surfshark even has its own private search tools so you can search across the web without being tracked on every single site you go to. Surfshark can also alert you to potential data breaches of your personal information so that you can stay on top of things and react before your information is totally compromised. I know I personally hate having all of my information tracked everywhere I go, and I'm sure you also enjoy your right to privacy just as much as I do, which is why I partnered with Surfshark to give you an extra 3 months free if you go to surfshark.deals/rarecars, or if you click the link below in the description and use the code RARECARS at checkout. So stay safe out there on the internet, and thank you to Surfshark for sponsoring this video. Now, as mentioned before, the Thunderbird itself was a 100% reactionary car from Ford. They saw the potential hole in the market that the new Corvette could fill, and they wanted to make sure they had a suitable competitor to go toe-to-toe with it. And in just shy of 1 year, they were able to go from idea to full-fledged concept, which they unveiled at the 1954 Detroit Auto Show. And spoiler alert, Ford's new Thunderbird was a smash hit. The Thunderbird promised to make up for all the shortcomings of the Corvette, which at the time was really marketed as a sports car first and foremost, while the new Thunderbird would be marketed and sold as, quote, a personal car of distinction. Ford didn't want people to pigeonhole the new Thunderbird into a sports car only category, so all of their marketing and literature would revolve around this. The Thunderbird was to be fast and sporty like a Corvette, but it would also pack more creature comforts and luxury to be enjoyed by the buyer. And when you compare the Corvette and Thunderbird side by side, it's pretty evident that that was the case. The Thunderbird visually had a much more imposing visual look to it, even though it was about the same size, where the Corvette was more of a full-on sports car. The Thunderbird was a crossover of the larger Ford vehicle styling cues, just shrunk down to a nicely proportioned 102-inch wheelbase package. This new Thunderbird, much like the Starliner that we covered in another video, was a child of the space age when it came to its styling. One look at its rear end and its thruster jet-styled exhaust and taillights give it away immediately, while the front of the Thunderbird happened to be a bit more subdued than the rear, and it represented a tame yet well-proportioned design. Ford nailed it on the outside with the Thunderbird, but under the hood, they had to do whatever they could to one-up Chevrolet. And their plan was to do this with their Y-block V8 engine. Initially at launch, the Thunderbird was available with the 292 cubic inch Y-block Ford V8, which made just shy of 200 horsepower in 1955. The 1956 model year saw subtle power increases to the 292, bumping power just over 200 horsepower. And it also saw the introduction of the new, larger 312 cubic inch Y-block Ford, which made up to 225 horsepower. But 1957, which was also the last year of the first generation Thunderbird, is where things got really gnarly under the hood. The 292 and 312s both received further minor power bumps. The 292 was now sitting just shy of 210 horsepower, and the 312 could be had in a naturally aspirated form all the way up to 285 horsepower thanks to the E-Code dual 4-barrel carburetor package which the Thunderbird had. That actually gave it more horsepower than the top dog 283 horsepower fuel-injected Vet of the same year. But the E-Code wasn't it for the Thunderbird. In 1957, there were a very select few Thunderbirds built with the F-Code designation, which included a 312 under the hood, but that was now also fed with an additional Paxton McCulloch supercharger. This supercharged engine saw further revisions to prep the 312 for the blower, such as a new set of heads and a boost-friendly compression ratio of 8.5 to 1. Now, not only was a supercharger a big deal under the hood of any car at the time, but made this Thunderbird into a top dog sports car in the American market was the power output. The F-Code Thunderbirds made 300 to 340 horsepower in stock form in 1957. They were also absolute torque monsters, putting out 440 foot-pounds of torque at about 2,500 RPM, which allowed them to clock the quarter mile in about 14 seconds. This new incredibly cool and incredibly expensive engine option made the handful of Thunderbirds that were equipped with them some of the fastest cars on the street in the day, which is apt because this supercharged Thunderbird wasn't just meant to be faster than the Corvette. No, it was actually meant to help homologate this combination for NASCAR. These supercharged Thunderbirds went through some pretty intense speed testing at Daytona in 1957, and during Daytona Speed Week, one of these supercharged cars hit a blistering top speed of just over 146 miles per hour. And with all that speed, you might be wondering, what kind of chassis and suspension setup did the Thunderbird actually get to keep everything together? And well, to be honest, from a suspension point, the first generation Thunderbird really wasn't that special. For the sake of keeping costs down and also getting the car to market as fast as possible, the Thunderbird's chassis was a pretty basic Ford chassis from some of the larger cars that was cut down and adjusted for application in the Thunderbird. It has a solid axle rear end, ball joint front suspension, and drum brakes all the way around. Now, this setup was ample for pretty much any of the 292 Thunderbirds and even some of the lower trimmed 312 cars. But as the horsepower started climbing and the probability of buyers driving their cars hard increased, this chassis setup, and more importantly the braking system, began to show its limits if the car was pushed. Which essentially means that with the F-Code Thunderbirds, you were paying for an absolute rocket ship, not really a handling car, at least for a long period of time, as the brakes would soon fade. But for the period, people were perfectly okay with that. These F-Code Thunderbirds could be ordered with a 3-speed manual transmission or an automatic for whatever the discerning buyer was looking for. And you could even get a 370 rear gear setup in the F-Code cars as well to really give you that light-to-light acceleration that you needed. But all this newfound performance came at a cost, a high $3,500+ cost in 1957, which made the F-Code Thunderbirds a pretty penny, especially when the price of a base Thunderbird was just under $3,000. You were paying $500+ just for the engine option. And in total, there were only about 200 of these rare F-Code Thunderbirds built, which is just a sliver of the total 21,000 Thunderbirds built for the 1957 model year, which was also the last year of the first generation Thunderbird. By 1958, the Thunderbird had now undergone a radical transformation that saw it grow in size and become a much different looking car. But these first generation supercharged F-Code Thunderbirds represent one of the most underappreciated American performance machines ever made. Most people look back and think of the Thunderbird as a comfortable cruiser with a sporty edge to it. But few people know that at one point, the Thunderbird was one of the most potent performers that money could buy. While it may not have been as nimble as a Corvette, the Thunderbird was a better and overall more livable car for practically all of America. And for those select few who wanted to burn rubber light to light, these F-Code cars were one of the coolest, if not the coolest way to do that back in 1957. But now I have a question for you. If you were of ample financial resources in 1957 and you had to buy one car new, what would you have? A new Corvette or one of these supercharged Thunderbirds? Let us know in the comments down below. Thank you all for watching another episode of our Rare Cars documentary series. If you enjoyed this video, we would greatly appreciate it if you could drop a like and also share this video with other enthusiasts. Also, please make sure that you are subscribed to the Rare Cars YouTube channel and smash that notification bell for more documentary style videos just like this on the world's most interesting cars. Until next time, enthusiasts.